Well, hello again, and thank you so much for continuing on the journey as we go back to the year 1991 and I talk about and rank 140 albums. Again, I truly, completely appreciate you watching these videos and investing your time and commenting if you've done that as well. Definitely appreciate it. This is quite an undertaking, and I'm asking quite a lot if you're watching all these videos. So I truly appreciate that. And so I'm just going to move on with the countdown. We've got Ed Kuepper at this point. Now, he is the guitarist, or was the guitarist, from the band The Saints. One of my favorite albums of all time, The Saints, I'm Stranded. I love their second album as well. They only had like 3. But Australian punk rock at its absolute finest. And he was the guitarist. He was one of the main forces in the band, songwriting and all of that. And the band broke up and they all went their separate ways. He's been in a couple of other projects like The Aints, and also solo stuff like this album called Honey Steals Gold. Now, he is not that popular in the U.S., and it's very difficult to find his albums, CD or vinyl. It's all about Australia, not really a thing in the United States, but since I'm so into the Saints, I definitely, seeked his music out. And so, yeah, got this, and it's pretty decent. It's great. It's a great album. It's got a lot of great musical texture on it. His voice is, he's not an operatic singer or anything like that, but his voice has a certain earnest quality to it. It really pulls you in. This album starts off with a 10-minute song called King of Vice. So a lot of music to build that up to where his vocals come in, and then a lot of music at the end too. It's a great instrumental, but it is 10 minutes long. It's going to be quite trying if you're just delving in for the first time. And the second song, it doesn't really stack up. It's a love song called Everything I've Got Is Yours. Maybe that was a single or something. It sounds like the type of thing that would have been a single. Again, none of this stuff was on U.S. radio or, in the spotlight at all in the United States. But it's okay for a love song. What I would do if you're just discovering this is start with track 3. That's where the good stuff really starts. Some highlights on here, especially with the music, more towards the end. Songs like The Way I Make You Feel, terrific. Lots of great textures on this. It's basically a rock pop type thing, but there's a lot of instruments that you don't usually hear performed in a certain way you don't hear. It's not punk rock. I should have mentioned that up front. This is not the Saints. This is not punk rock. This is much more mellow. This is much more layered. Very melodic as well. It's one of those albums that takes a few listens to kind of absorb all the different little intricacies that are going on. So yeah, Ed Kuepper and Honey Steals Gold. If you're looking for something a little bit different, looking for something most people in the U.S. have not heard of, check this out. Well, I guess we all got to grow up sometime, and that's what Ozzy was accused of doing with this release. This is No More Tears, and this is probably the jumping off point, I think, for a lot of people. I talked about it in a video just a couple videos back. There's the actual full cover there. But a couple videos back when I was talking about my first year in commercial radio about how Osmosis was the big album, and that was a lot of people's jumping off point there too, I found out. But a lot of people were saying, yeah, this was probably it. He kind of mellows out a little bit on some of the tracks here. Of course, Mama, I'm Coming Home was the huge song on here. Never was a fan of that one. I like my Ozzy rockin', I like my Ozzy, the Diary of a Madman and Blizzard of Oz and even Bark at the Moon, some of the album tracks on there that never get talked about. But I can see why, you get a little older, you want to put out something a little more nuanced, a little more mature. Did he get a Grammy for this, or was nominated for a Grammy for I Don't Want to Change the World, I think was the song. So now he's getting Grammys, so, But a decent album. He's got some great people with him. Of course, Lemmy Kilmister's co-writing a few songs, like Desire and Hellraiser. And Mr. Tinker Train, which opens this, which that's definitely not a favorite Ozzy song. I mean, I know Ozzy likes to be out there and likes to present himself as characters in different songs and weird people out, but when you're playing the role of a child, that's taken a little a little far, especially for the opening track. It's like, wow, okay, yikes. But yeah, so it starts off on kind of the wrong foot. But you do get some nice, like some nice, more relaxed tracks on here. Road to Nowhere closes it. That's probably one of my favorite tracks on here. It's kind of a retrospective thing, looking back on his life or whatever. And, I guess saying don't follow in my footsteps, but, most people wouldn't be able to follow in Ozzy Osbourne's footsteps, so no problem there. No More Tears title track, lengthy song there, and just this kind of grudging, plotting, no more tears, do 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 do. Not a lot of really fast up tempo, just kind of thrashing out stuff on this Ozzy release. Time After Time's another ballad on here. That was another big radio song. I think we had 4 or 5 that we played off of here on the radio all the time. But Bob Daisley's back as the bassist. You got Zakk Wylde on here as well. So he is in great company. And like I said, making an album that's a little more mainstream. It's got a little broader reach. It's got lighters going up in the concerts for a lot of these particular tracks on here. And so if that's what he was setting out to do, he did quality work doing it. That's the thing. If that's what they were going for, they nailed it. But I think it's a good, possibly pretty good, great even maybe album at times, but not my favorite Ozzy. But if this is what they were going for, with broader appeal, little more mature, little mellowed out, then they nailed it with this album, No More Tears. EMF and Schubert Dip. Schubert as in like the composer. Very clever. Schubert Dip, another one coming from the UK with the dance music with a rock twist. These guys, of course, had the big song Unbelievable, but this is a pretty decent album all the way through. I don't know why they didn't have more hits. They should have been more than just the whole one-hit wonder. Some really cool stuff on here. These guys always jumping around with they had the look of the time, with the skateboards and the big hat sideways and the big shorts and whatever, and they're all jumping around and whatever. They were around for a couple more years. From what I understand, though, they were around for until 93 or whatever, 94. And then they just came back and they've got a new album out this year. Who saw that coming? But, EMF, and they're supposedly they stand for the fan club of Depeche Mode, which is Epsom Mad Funkers or something like that. But they also have a live song where the EMF stands for something else. I'll just say the E stands for ecstasy, and you can guess what the MF stands for. If you can't guess, it stands for motherfucker. This is pretty cool all the way through. Of course, Unbelievable is the standout, but it's got some nice tunes on here. Unbelievable, I always thought was incredible, and I mentioned this in a video that I did about hidden profanity in songs. That's got to be the time that that fuck is said in a song the most times, where apparently, at least in the US, no radio station programmers have ever noticed this, except for me. That whole, oh, whoop, whoop, that they're saying what the fuck, and then they say what the fuck was that? That's what that sample is that keeps playing over and over again. And I've never heard a censored version of that. It played on top 40 stations. It played on alternative rock stations. It played in the mall. And what the fuck? Do, 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 do. Oh, what the fuck? Like, no one's gonna, okay, cool. Fine with me. Go ahead and play what the fuck over and over again. They have got the award for the best hidden profanity in any song ever. I can't believe more people didn't catch that. And of course, you can see my whole video on other songs that have hidden profanity in it as well. But no one did it. No one did it quite like EMF. That is for sure. And that's Andrew Dice Clay, by the way, in case you didn't know. Ranking the 140 albums from 1991. So encountering a whole lot of the grunge sound coming in, a whole lot of alternative rock, even some of the holdovers from the 80s glam hair metal era, some death metal in here as well. A couple of pop things thrown in, and then you get some lighter fare like this from This Mortal Coil. Say that 10 times fast. This Mortal Coil. The album is called Blood. It's a very, very long album. This is a proper double album. This is not just like a 55, 60-minute CD that they're trying to put on an album and 3 sides or 4 sides all spread out with 2 songs on each side. This is a full-on 80-minute ride, and it's definitely light. It's definitely kind of new age-ish. It definitely has to be listened to at the right time in the right setting. This is not a 3 o'clock in the afternoon driving around in traffic album. This is a 3 o'clock in the morning, listen to it on headphones type of album. And it's interesting because this actual whole concept, you know, this Mortal Coil, I guess, outfit, was put together by the head of 4AD, the 4AD label. Usually when a record exec puts things together, it's not the most artistic statement, but this is an exception. Of course, 4AD, there's a lot of passion within that label to put out quality product, and they're really, you know, it's a specific type of sound that you usually get from that label, so they're definitely an exception. The guy's name is Ivo Watts Russell, and he put this whole thing together, getting various people from his label to be a part of this. And like I said, it is a very late night kind of sound. Synthy, low-key, you know, very much so. Dreamy, haunting, you know, those are some of the words that I'd use to describe it. And beautiful in places. Beautifully tragic in some places. There are songs on here that are heart-wrenching. There are songs on here that, you know, they kind of delve into more of the cliche love song area, and those aren't the most interesting ones. There are cover songs on here. Rodney Crowell's Till I Gain Control Again, coming towards the end of the album. Did not see that coming. There's Spirit's Nature's Way. They do a version of that. They even do a Syd Barrett cover on here as well. Not my favorite Syd Barrett song, but they do an okay job of it. Not the best song on the album by any stretch, but Late Night has a lot of cliche. The Way You Kiss Me will always be very special to me. You know, I don't know about all that, but there is songs that just jump right out, like the one about the 7-year-old child who died in Hiroshima, and you know, he's a ghost now going door to door, and it's just, it really goes into the whole thing about how his body's burning, and it really gets kind of graphic with its detail about this child ghost explaining how it died, and yeah, Cannibal Corpse, you know, step aside. But yeah, there's a Chris Bell cover on here, You and Your Sister. So covers, original material, it all fits together nicely. Instrumentals, vocals, it's all this kind of, like I said, dreamy, kind of haunting kind of sound. But this is not dream pop, like I said. This is more in a new age kind of synthy kind of arena. So yeah, this Mortal Coil. There's also a beautifully morose ballad called With Tomorrow that gets slammed shut by this instrumental called Loose Joints, which I feel is kind of completely unnecessary. But so you do have things like that. But this is usually not the kind of music that I'm into, but I think it's done really well here. It is it's beautifully morose, like I said. It's haunting and all of that, but it lacks a certain amount of pretentiousness, so that's good. It is quite an experience, but it's an experience that, you know, you kind of, it's one of those ones that I say on here, you know, you got to pay attention. You got to give it your full attention. You can't, you know, just be doing housework or, you know, working on the car in the garage and this is playing in the background. That's not how it's meant to be. Cover art is just a face. They could have been a little more imaginative with that, I guess, but yeah, it's, I've heard of the name This Mortal Coil, but I thought it was just a band. I didn't realize it was a whole project by, you know, record label exec putting all of his people together to do this, and I didn't know anything about it really, and so glad I got to experience this, and I'll definitely be checking this out again, but it is a long album, so you're in for quite a ride. Just kind of like this video series. It just kind of goes on and on and on and on, and not only this Mortal Coil, but there's also a group just called Coil. That's still to come in these rankings. 1991 brought the Allman Brothers Band back again for the second album after their reunion, called Shades of Two Worlds. And it's exactly what you want from the Allman Brothers Band at this point. They are pros, they are masters at their craft, and the energy has not let up. They still sound like they want to do it. They still are doing it. And they don't sound like they're chasing trends. They're doing their thing. And, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deal. Nice lengthy album. You get a lot of music here. It is just these guys, you know, doing it. And starts off with a song called End of the Road. Now, you know you got some blues rock when you're starting off at the end of the road. But yeah, great tracks on here. Is this comparable to something like Brothers and Sisters and Eat a Peach and that kind of thing? Well, I mean, some of it. It's not going to have the classic tracks that you've heard for your whole life, but I mean, if you haven't heard this and you kind of let the Allman Brothers Band drop off, but you were big fans of their early stuff, you definitely want to check this out, I think. Might not disappoint you. It's got, the typical instrumental on here from those guys where the guitar, just playing off of each other. That's called Kind of Bird. I don't know if Kind of Bird is is that a jazz reference or not, but they've always incorporated certain jazz elements into their music, but make it interesting, but it doesn't sound like they're trying to do jazz rock, thankfully. But yeah, that's great. They've got a nice, it's the Allman Brothers Band, so right off the bat, they got a 10-minute long, big long instrumental break in the middle of the song. That's track 3. So they don't wait around. They give it to you right up front. And great tunes on here like Bad Rain, talking about you better leave that stuff alone. That's how you know they are veterans. At this point, it's not about celebrating it. It's not about, partying with it. It's about you better leave that stuff alone. You got Dickie Bettis. You got, of course, Greg Allman. You got Butch Trucks. You got Warren Haynes for, I believe, the second time in the Allman Brothers Band. So all the veteran guys, well, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of the veterans are still on board. And, yeah, it's a great sound. You got Tom Dowd as the producer. You got a song on here called Get On With Your Life, where this old gal, she has taken to the drink. As she's in bed at night, she's still in bed in the morning, and by afternoon, you're so sloppy drunk you couldn't even raise your head. Man, get that girl some help. But yeah, can you imagine having somebody just laying in bed drunk? That just keeps drinking and just laying in bed. Man, I guess that's all right if somebody's paying the bills. But yeah, Allman Brothers Band, Shades of Two Worlds. Not a disappointment at all, and that's why it made it so high up in here. Now, it is the typical, they do get a little bit into the typical tropes of blues rock. They're not venturing out into new territory. They're not going to blow you away with something like, wow, didn't see that coming. This is your typical blues rock foundational stuff at this point. So, this isn't going to be something that's going to expand your blues rock palette or bring on something fresh. It's the Allman Brothers Band. Like I said, just they're doing their thing. And we continue the rankings. We go to Brazil for some thrash rock from Sepultura and Arise. These guys aren't fucking around. Yeah, great thrash album. One of the best of 1991 as far as a lot of lists and people are concerned. I was rocking out to these guys in starting off right around 93 with the Chaos AD album, which I think is superior to this one. That's when they go major label. But really like this one too, obviously. It's here in the rankings. But yeah, Arise from Sepultura. Title track, it just comes on strong, man. You know exactly what you're in for. As soon as that title track hits, Arise. And man, they got a really nice groove and a riff going on right before I See the World, and then it only lasts for like 15 seconds. I don't know why they didn't extend that, but anyway, a lot of great energy on this. Fantastic playing on this as well, and not a lot of the stuff that's kind of held over from the glam stuff. Some of the thrash bands and even some of the death metal bands will have that squealy guitar thing and even the hoarse neighing guitar effect, and it just sounds out of place. Because it's definitely going to go away as the thrash metal stuff continues over the years. That stuff gets, left out, but it's still on some of the tracks from some of the bands in 91, but not Sepultura. They are serious, and their lyrics are serious. It's not this cartoonish stuff. Vocals are throaty. They are bellowed. They are, they are thrash metal vocals. But, a lot of this is not quite as intense as some of the other stuff. Even some of the stuff that I like that I'll have a little higher on the list, it's not quite at that intensity level. It's intense, especially if you're not acquainted with thrash metal. But a lot of it, you remove the vocals, and it could be basically just really hard metal, really hard rock. So it probably would make a really good starter album if you're trying to get into thrash metal and you want something that's not going to be goofy and, whatever, and something a little more serious with the lyrics and just incredible playing. You start with Sepultura, Arise. Great way to do that. But like I said, great tracks in your first track especially. And then you got other ones like Under Siege, which has a little bit of, hellish kind of effects going on in it. It comes more towards the end, so it's nice to throw that in there for a little variety. You've got Altered State, which features, all sorts of different sounds and sort of sonic landscapes. It kind of goes in different places, which makes it interesting. So there are interesting tracks on here, but a lot of this, especially the first half, is just full-on thrash metal. And then the second half is where they start to get a little more experimental. So definitely check it out if you haven't. I mean, if you're into thrash metal, what am I talking about? You've checked this out, I'm sure. Sepultura, Arise. If you're not going to listen to it loud, you probably shouldn't bother, because these guys aren't fucking around. Morrissey came out with his second album, Kill Uncle, in 1991, and I'm not as familiar with Morrissey's solo stuff. In fact, I wasn't really familiar with this album at all, and finally got the chance to hear this, and not too bad. Typical Morrissey territory, even though some of the critics, I guess, didn't care for it very much when it was released, and that's one of the reasons I think I never heard it, but going by the general opinions or whatever, but I didn't see anything wrong with it at all. It's typical, like I said, typical Morrissey territory. It's a self-loathing, right off the bat, first couple of songs there, and then you have the rest of the songs kind of have, it's like a little scenes, basic individual scenes. You have the mute witness that, is in shock and can't speak at the trial. You have the girlfriend that he's driving home that doesn't want to be in the relationship. You have the really sad story of the Asian boy whose only friend was killed. And it's Morrissey kind of, he sounds sincere. He sounds like he cares. He's up, he's somewhat, I guess, on high, judging people on high above and just kind of seeing the scenes or whatever. I think some people would consider him a twat, as the people in the UK would sometimes call him. But I think it suits him. I think that's kind of, I don't know, that's what I like about him, is he just has this sort of cavalier attitude, but at the same time a self-loathing attitude, and it just seems to work with him. It's almost like that's what he's here for. He can't, to do something else or whatever wouldn't be suitable. That's kind of why he's here, is to do that. And so I enjoy his lyrics and his scenes and situations and these songs, and the music of this one has a sort of a throwback style, almost Baroque in some places, but somewhat a very, like you're watching a very small play, not something large and bombastic and theatrical, but sort of a small theater that you're seeing these individual scenes play out in. But yeah, some people do not like the Morrissey and would. Well, I don't want to use the word wanker because, God, what was that? Like about a year ago, for some reason, a bunch of the Americans with the record videos, the vinyl community, started using the word wanker all the time. It was like ridiculous. It's like, that's an English thing. That's not, oh, well, I use that word all the time. No, you stop. You're being pretentious. I am not being pretentious just because I'm trying to sound overly sophisticated and worldly using words not from my culture. That's literally the textbook definition of pretentious. Anyway, I don't think it happens anymore. Kind of that ship kind of sailed by. But if you want to be pompous, go join the band live. Okay, and we continue the ranking with some regional heroes. Uncle Tupelo, yes, they are from the area where I live, so was way into these guys a long time before they got popular. They are, like I said, local heroes, and I had a friend that was like, that's all he wanted to listen to was Uncle Tupelo, and then later offshoots of Uncle Tupelo and Sunvolt and Wilco and all that kind of stuff. So very well versed in these guys. And 1991 was the year for Still Feel Gone, their second album. And you, of course, got Jeff Tweedy and Jay Farrar sharing vocal duties. First two tracks definitely, spotlight their two different vocal styles. Jeff Tweedy, more of a throaty kind of voice. Jay Farrar, a little more of a twangish thing going on. Not exactly twangy, but twang-ish. They are from, southern Illinois, so they're not like from, Alabama or Tennessee or something like that. So it's twang-ish. It's kind of like a slackerish type of thing going on there. And the first two songs really kind of also spotlight their two different styles. You've got the first song, Gun, which is one of the more rock-oriented tracks on here. And then you have the second track, Looking for a Way Out, which is more of almost like a country type thing. It's kind of got more of like a REM. They used to get compared to REM a lot. But in this particular ranking, their 1991 album comes up higher than the REM album, so they've surpassed them. But yeah, so that's who they used to get compared to for people that weren't in the know and didn't know who they were. And it's kind of like, oh, well, they sound like REM a little bit. The IRS years of REM. But they definitely had their own thing going on. They were one of the pioneers of that whole 90s alt country rock type of thing. Definitely a big star influence that you can hear. But yeah, I like a little more of their rock-oriented stuff than the straightforward country stuff that they try to do. They do acoustic, just full-on acoustic songs where it's just Jay Farrar and an acoustic guitar, like Still Be Around. And not a big fan of like tracks like that. That gives me those annoying guy with the acoustic guitar at the party vibes, And as you probably, if you remember my Toad the Wet Sprocket review that upset some people apparently, I am just not into that whole thing where it sounds like the annoying guy at the party with the acoustic guitar. But yeah, Still Be Around. But most of this album's terrific. Like I said, I've heard it a lot and saw them in concert a few times at Mississippi Nights, including their final concert. I talked about, a lot of this in a previous video when I was talking about the first year I was on commercial radio and all the stuff, when Uncle Tupelo had broken up and they'd splintered off into two groups and, you had this camp and that camp and whatever, Sunvolt people and Wilco people. But this brings back great memories. It's a great low-key, laid-back kind of album that does have a little bit more of a oomph to it with some of the more energetic songs as well. As it gets more towards the end of the CD, there's some nice flourishes that pop up, like you get a steel guitar in one song, you get a banjo in another song discarded. So nice little touches here and there to keep things interesting. And you don't have to choose between Jeff Tweedy and Jay Farrar. You get them both. So that's Uncle Tupelo. So it is 140 albums from 1991. Thank you so much for watching this. If you're still on the journey with me, and if you're watching this right now, that means you are. So yeah, thanks again. And we are up to the band NoMeansNo. 0 + 2 = 1, according to this band and their album title. But yeah, it's pretty intense stuff. You turn this thing on and it just blasts out of your speakers. Especially the track "The Fall." They've it's the kind of thing you crank up. Listed under punk rock in a lot of places, but it's not your typical punk rock, that is for sure. These guys definitely got their own thing going on, and it's like tracks like "The Fall" with the odd time signature and the galloping drum kind of pattern, and then it just flies off into 4/4 time, and then you're like, which a lot of those songs do that when they have the odd time signature, 7/4 or whatever. They'll get around to just flying into like a 4/4 pattern. "Money" by Pink Floyd is the big one that I think plays the trail for that, where they figured out, you know what, we're going to do this thing halfway through the song and then we're just going to take off and everybody can rock out and everybody knows it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, So yeah, "The Fall" is the name of that song. These guys, some of their vocals kind of sound like they might be goofing off, especially early on in the album. But the music does not. These guys definitely bring it as far as the music. Intense stuff. And some of the lyrics, too. When you get further into the disc, like there is weird stuff. There's avant-garde stuff. There's goofy stuff. And then there's angry, just, visceral stuff, too. Like lyrics in the title track, like "The hoot of an owl and the dreams of a mouse." You go from that to just this screaming stuff about, you don't know a fucking thing, you're a stupid fuck, the typical things you expect from like something called punk rock. In this song called "Every Day I Start to Ooze," great title there. But yeah, that just goes on in this angry just rant through the whole thing. So you're feeling pissed off, you might want to throw that track on. But yeah, it goes in like different directions. Like I said, from goofiness to like somewhat, pseudo poetry into this just angry screaming. There's a song on there called "The Night Nothing Became Everything" that gets super fast It's like speed punk, if there's such a thing. You know, you got the speed metal. This would be the speed punk on that particular track. So a lot of different sounds here. Definitely interesting listen. No means no. And 0 + 2 = 1. You know, once you've listened to it, you can't argue with that. Kicks, Hotwire. This is one of those 80s glam type bands with the 1991 album. They've managed to actually make an album in 1991, doing it their way, their music. It actually, I think, got better with time. That is not easy to do, and I think they pulled it off. This is the exact lane I want to be in when I'm putting on some ridiculous, hard 80s rock in 1991. Just double entendres, just sleaziness, just sex everywhere, just partying everywhere. I don't need mid-level stuff like White Line. I don't need whiny stuff. I don't need ballads and whatever. I need party rock. These guys deliver. I did not think this was going to end up as high as it did on the list, but I got to put it where it belongs, and it belongs right here. Kicks. Who would have thought? Starts off, first line of the whole album. I got your hot wire. I got your magic wand. Now, you know it's going to be killer when they just start off right with that. And, it's like, I got your magic wand. Wonder what he could be talking about. Watch me turn a keyhole into a canyon. Abracadabra. Feel free to use that. It doesn't actually say that. That's my own line that I came up with. But so the song ends with "I'm going to start your car," though. We can do better than "I'm going to start your car." I guess Hotwire, but still. So all kinds of great riffs on here. Just these guys sound like they're just having a blast. They don't care that hair rock is almost over with. They couldn't care. We're going to go out in a blaze of glory, and that's what it sounds like they're doing. Now, it's not all stellar. There is some kind of goofy parts on here. There's this song called "Girl Money" that has the same kind of sound as AC/DC's "Big Balls," but it's about girl money and how you've saved up your money to spend on the girls. You know, you got $1 for the drink, $1 for the honey. So he's going to buy her $1 drink, and then he's going to give her another $1 for the honey. So, man, that must be some delicious honey for a whole $1. I guess this was pre-inflation. Dollar went obviously a lot further in 1991, where the ladies were concerned anyway. So there's that. We could do without the song "Tear Down the Walls." You know, you can just skip over that one. We could do a little better with some of the double entendres, like "I'm gonna bump the la la," which happens in the song "Loveaholic," L-U-V, aholic, of course. They're still holding on to those spellings. But overall, it's a lot of fun. If you take this in the right spirit, it puts you right back into that mode. Get yourself somebody of your preference that appreciates this kind of a party too. And, just have a great fucking time with this album. Literally. Kicks and Hotwire. Again, did not think it was going to end up quite this high on the list, but man, what a fun album. It's 140 albums from 1991. Ranking them, again, just want to quickly thank you for watching these videos. And we are up to, unfortunately, the final album that Freddie Mercury released with Queen in his lifetime, and that is called Innuendo. Now, this was supposed to be a big comeback for these guys. They had just signed with Hollywood Records. In the U.S., I don't know about other parts of the world, but in the U.S., their back catalog had been majorly released on CD by Hollywood Records for the first time, and that's when I picked them all up. I got a fire sale on Queen all at the same time, pretty much. I had a few of their albums, but I bought up all the Queen right then and there. So got a crash course history lesson in Queen on compact disc. But so there was a major push behind this, a lot of money behind it. It was supposed to really bring Hollywood Records into the into the forefront. I'm not sure it did that. They didn't last very long. But Innuendo is an interesting album. It is, I think, a few notches above a lot of their 80s stuff. Obviously, it's not going to be as classic as the 70s stuff. That's the Queen that I think most people want to go to. It's the Queen I want to hear. But this is pretty good on its own terms. You have the title track, which is, sort of overly theatrical, but then, hey, wait, it's Queen. Of course it's overly theatrical. but a lot of great different things going on there. You get the little, like Mexicali kind of stuff going on. You get the the more of the rock stuff. It reminds me of stuff from their really early albums, that title track. So it's a really interesting and kind of attention-grabbing way of starting it. Starts off pretty strong. A lot of the rest of the album doesn't really live up to that promise. You've got tracks on here like Ride the Wild Wind that tries to be a hard rocker, but there's just too much junk thrown on it. Too many effects and too many weird things going around, and the drums are kind of buried. Headlong was the big rock single that actually got on the radio. It's okay, for a rock song, Queen rockin', it's all right, passable. The Hitman is another really hard rock tune on here. And I'm going to sound really bitchy and granular here, but it's just one of my pet peeves, I guess you'd call it, is the all rights and the yeahs and the woos don't work on this, especially the Hitman. They sound insincere, and there's nothing that ruins a hard rock song for me than an insincere all right. I know that sounds strange. Maybe you're the same way. But if somebody's rocking and you hear this kind of, yeah, all right, and it doesn't sound from the heart, it just blows the whole thing. And there's a lot of that on here. Of course, Freddie Mercury, you have to forgive the guy. I mean, he's not in great health at all. He is going to pass away in just a month or so, or a couple months, or whenever it was. And, they should have just brought that, they should have muted those. That should not have been a part of the official recording. They should have just taken that stuff out. We don't need Freddie Mercury going, oh, all right, it's just tough to hear that. But I'm going slightly mad, is Freddie being Freddie, I'm going slightly mad, and that kind of, again, theatrical sort of almost old Hollywood style. I think that there's a video that goes with that actually is in black and white and has all this old, stuff from the 20s and whatever look to it. But that's an interesting song. The powerhouse one on here for me is the very last track, The Show Must Go On. That's the one that you're just kind of, for me, it stops you in your tracks, especially when you realize what's going, that's the thing. You realize what's going on when this album is being created. It's kind of like the David Bowie Black Star. I don't know what Freddie Mercury was thinking, but he might have been realizing that this was going to be the final album. Now, there were posthumous ones like Made in Heaven and things like that, but this is the last one released during his lifetime. This is the last really kind of official Queen album with Freddie Mercury. And, of course, there was one with Paul Rogers. But anyway, yeah, so just heartbreaking final song about how he's, tired and, he doesn't feel it, but the show must go on, and I'm breaking down, but the show goes on. And, that's a big phrase in theater and in probably the music world as well. Whatever you're doing on stage, the show must go on. And so it's things like that that sort of elevate this album a little higher than just its contents, is the backstory, the what's going on behind the scenes. So that's why it's here in the ranking. But yeah, Queen Innuendo, the more you know about the history of it, the more you'll appreciate it. All right, the extreme metal's getting top-notch when it comes from Sweden, and that is where Entombed is from, and their Clandestine CD is what was out in 1991. Heard this for the first time right around 94. Again, introduced to a lot of the extreme metal in college, and this was one of them, and man, blew my mind. Especially the drumming, man. The drumming in this is stellar. Very brutal, very extreme, and very much right there, nicely placed in the mix. It's Nick Anderson on drums, who actually is the lead singer on this Entombed album. He's only the singer on this one. The usual singer is gone for this album. I think he comes back later, but Nick Anderson is the singer and the drummer, kind of like Genesis. Yeah, Entombed is similar to Genesis. But yeah, this album is better than the Genesis album that was out this year. I've already talked about that one. But yeah, so this is brutal, extreme metal. It is fast, it is heavy, it is intense. It has a full dynamic range remix. Not into the remix. That's one of the things I loved about this album is the mix. The drums are just bam right there. The rhythm, the guitar, just meaty guitars right there. I think it's kind of funny when the squealing guitar comes in every once in a while. It almost sounds quaint, in a weird way, like because I mean everything is so brutal, and then you've got that coming in like, oh, cute. There's that little squealy guitar. But no, I love the meaty, a little further down on the fret, sound with that guitar on here. The drums, like I said, I can't say enough about the drums, but the vocals I could take or leave. They are not completely like Cannibal Corpse type of thing, that type of deal. But they're not full-throated bellowing like I really like in this kind of music. It's somewhere in between. So they're okay. Again, they're not, I could take or leave the vocals. It's the music, man. It's the music on this album. And I think the highlight is a song called Evelyn. That's the best. But there are a lot of great moments in a lot of these songs, especially the second track on here, just the way that one starts off, just like, I wish they would have just thrashed their way through that. But what happens with Entombed is they get a groove just blasting, and then they'll change it, and then they'll change it again. So I wish they'd do some songs where they just blast all the way through with that same intense, riff and everything. But, they're always changing it up to make it interesting. But, Entombed, Clandestine, I mean, if you like the extreme metal, you've definitely got to check out this album. And like I said, try to do the original mix. And if you're into the satanic stuff, Satan does get a shout out, literally shouting Satan. That is in the song Crawl. So, Entombed, Clandestine. I have always enjoyed the sounds of Urge Overkill. I didn't recognize them until they got major label with the Saturation album, and then Exit the Dragon was after that. And then they kind of fell off. I don't even know. I think they put out an album a couple of years ago, and it was their first one in 15 years or something like that. I don't know if they're still out there. They're from Chicago. And this was the album that was on Touch and Go Records right before they broke big. And so this is like one of my favorite ones. Probably my favorite album from these guys. Supersonic Storybook. Like I said, on Touch and Go Records, produced by Steve Albini. And so he's hit or miss with me. Some of the stuff I like, some of his stuff I don't. This really sounds good, though. It's got a really full bass, drum, just rock guitars cranked. Sounds really clean and clear, but just cranked up, and the bass is very present, which you don't hear a lot in rock music from this time, especially when it's on independent labels. But this sounds fantastic, especially on vinyl. This is one of, I think, 4 records that I'm showing. I mentioned that before when I showed the Richard Thompson one. I just do not have a lot of vinyl from the 90s, especially 1991. So I'm not showing a lot of vinyl in this video series. I hope that's okay. The Kids Are Insane starts this whole thing off in fine fashion. Like I said, right away you get the guitars, you get the bass, you get the big drum sound, all of that. Fantastic. These guys aren't afraid to get a little funky, which kind of sets them apart from the other kind of independent rock bands at the time, where everybody had that kind of grungy sound, or maybe they had the, kind of a power pop thing going on. These guys get a little funky with the Bionic Superstition, and they're not even afraid to do a Hot Chocolate cover. Hot Chocolate, You Sexy Thing, that band from the 70s. They also had a song called Emmeline that was more of a ballad, a pretty serious song, if you know the topic of it. I can't discuss the topic on YouTube. But serious, heartfelt soul song, and they do a great job of it. They don't try to make it sound like some sort of parody, or they're doing a bit with it. They're pretty straightforward with their cover of that. So that's great. Today is Blackie's birthday. It's just silly about one of the band members having a birthday, I guess. But yeah, the very last song here, the theme from Navajo, is kind of, it kind of reminds you that, okay, we're doing early 90s indie rock here, so they got to put something kind of goofy on there. But yeah, Urge Overkill, Supersonic Storybook, love this album. Great to just crank up. Definitely one of the better albums of 1991 as we continue this countdown. They should, in all theory, just keep getting better and better and better. That's the idea. At least in my opinion, they're getting better and better. Hopefully you've found some favorites here as we get closer and closer to the absolute best. And this definitely belongs in that position. So yeah, check out some Urge Overkill. If you're not familiar with them, Sister Havana was the big song off of Saturation. They also had Positive Bleeding on that album. And then check those 2 singles out, and then check this out as well. So that leaves us with 26 albums left. The 26 best albums of 1991 according to, well, me. And I've been counting down all the way from 140. Now the next video coming will actually be those 8 albums that I considered unrankable for one reason or another. There was 8 of them, so that video is going to be like a bonus video coming up. And then we'll get back to the ranking with number 26. I'm Robert Fithen. Thank you so much for watching these videos, commenting on these videos. Have I shown your favorite album yet, or is it still coming up? Hopefully, it's still coming up. So thanks again. Hopefully, I will talk to you again next time.